The 2025 standard rotation is approaching relentlessly, and without exaggeration, it will be the most dramatic in Hearthstone's history. Never before has the standard format lost such an immense number of powerful and useful cards. For the first time, 93 legendary cards will rotate into Wild, and after 2 game years, none of them turned out to be completely useless. This will likely cause a significant reset in the overall power level of the game. In this video, we'll help you avoid mistakes and highlight the cards you can safely disenchant.
Time to rock and roll!
Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician and this is Holomancer.
Also, Chief Investigative Reporter Dora joined us this evening.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
We regularly share videos about the best candidates for disenchanting ahead of rotation, but the recently analyzed data from the past 2 years has shocked us. Over this period, entirely new trends have emerged regarding card utility.
There are almost no completely useless cards left. At the very least, most are viable for short-term experimentation. Nearly every legendary card has its moment to shine, even if only briefly. Cards that fall out of favor in standard and disappear from the meta can unexpectedly resurface after a long time, finding a new niche on the meta's fringe or, in rare cases, even becoming part of Tier 1 decks. While the number of viable competitive decks may not always seem impressive in the short term, over time, the variety is immense. The ever-changing meta regularly reshuffles the favorites, bringing unexpected experiments to the forefront.
The potential for creative deck building and uncovering hidden synergies is vast. Many new cards that seem extremely promising often struggle to find a permanent place in top archetypes, forcing them to prove their usefulness over an extended period, something that was much rarer in the past. Because of this, players should hold on to even weak cards for as long as possible to avoid missing out on future opportunities.
Despite Blizzard effectively eliminating all rational incentives to keep old cards after rotation, we strongly advise against blindly disenchanting everything in your collection. This is especially true for the current sets that will soon leave standard.
Duels mode has been removed. Wild format is stagnating, and the unusual approach to Twist's development will likely lead to its eventual shutdown. It's fair to say that the Hearthstone team has completely failed to maintain the long-term value of old cards. Despite this, we believe that attempts to reignite interest in older cards may return in unexpected ways in the future. I prefer to keep all my cards, but if you desperately need dust, there are some cards that are least rational to keep.
Let's start our review with a legendary card that earned the title of the worst from the Year of the Wolf, Rhythm Dancer Riza. Despite being a dual-class card and receiving a cost reduction buff, it barely caught players' interest. At its peak, its utility rate was just 5%, categorizing it as lame. Its average utility over time was a mere 0.5%. Only a small number of players attempted to use it in experimental off-meta builds for a few months, but its effectiveness remained abysmally low. Throughout the current year, the card has seen zero play in both Rogue and Demon Hunter decks, and this trend has not changed.
A quick note on how we determine card utility. 2 years ago, we completely overhauled our approach to analyzing the best cards in the game.
We now assess not only how long a card remained in the meta and its average popularity, but also calculate its utility index based on a comprehensive set of factors. This includes win rate, impact on match outcome, especially at high ranks, overall popularity within its class, usefulness across multiple archetypes, and even playability in Wild. This data is based on the analysis of nearly 1,000 deck builds, allowing us to determine a card's crafting priority with maximum accuracy and objectivity. Reaching the highest utility index score is incredibly difficult, only the most powerful cards achieve it. A score of 40 to 50% usually indicates that a card is either popular or effective. Despite the challenge of earning a high score, an astonishing number of cards have maintained strong utility over an extended period. Let's continue our review of the worst cards. Those with an average utility between 2% and 7%. If you take a close look at this list, you'll realize that most of these cards were part of the meta at some point.
I've always liked the Paladin spell the Badlands Bandits from a design perspective. Based on the classic ideology of the game, it's a strong card, but under modern conditions, it saw widespread use only right after its release, during the experimentation phase. After that, it was completely forgotten. Algalon also has an interesting design, but in today's high-power environment, the card is utterly meaningless. It was mainly used post-release, but in December, we recorded its brief return in the meta as part of a somewhat notable control priest build, though with a terrible win rate. Its average utility index was only 3%. Starlight Groove is another paladin spell that had low utility but was still part of the meta. You've likely seen players attempting to find effective scenarios for using this card. Overall, it appeared and disappeared throughout Festival of Legends and Titans phases, even reaching a peak utility of 43%. That means that, at its best, it was still just a niche card.
The same applies to Cagehead. Its average utility was 6%, peaking at over 40%. Players kept experimenting with it for about 4 months post-release, but after Titans all notable attempts to make it work stopped for good.
Elite Tauren Champion also had a brief moment of relevance, but only shortly after release. Like Cagehead, it disappeared from the meta following Titans. However, last month, the card made an unexpected comeback in Fatigue Demon Hunter. The class is currently in crisis, and players are experimenting with the wildest interactions possible. The deck's win rate, however, was abysmal. You might be surprised, but Slagmaw the Slumbering was actually a somewhat notable card for a time. Players experimented with it after its release, and a buff even briefly increased the intensity of those tests. However, the card's potential wasn't enough to secure a place in top-tier decks. It vanished almost entirely after the Badlands mini-set was released and never returned to the meta. Flame Behemoth was also only relevant immediately post-release. Occasionally, it found its way into very niche experimental builds. The last time it resurfaced was in Mech Paladin, an archetype that barely had a 0% play rate. Are these cards weak? Absolutely, but it would be a mistake to call them completely useless.
Next, we have 5 cards with an overall utility of 9 to 10%. All of them, except for the spell Rhythm and Roots, received buffs, yet none managed to become fully competitive. However, they were more noticeable and had longer periods of use, not just during the post-release experimental phase. Their peak utility averaged around 50%, meaning that, at their best, they managed to qualify as mid-cards. The only exception is DJ Manastorm. For the longest time, this card held the title of the worst in the game, being completely useless. But after receiving a buff and following the release of the Perils in Paradise mini-set, it became a star in Big Spell Mage, pushing its utility index to nearly 90% and securing a spot among the top 10 legendary cards in October 2024. However, after the deck was nerfed, the card gradually lost relevance and eventually disappeared from the meta.
This card's journey is a perfect example of how in today's Hearthstone, even the most useless card can unexpectedly achieve incredible success.
Cathalan Bloodwatcher ranks 80th on our list and is the first card here that, despite low usefulness in Standard, has found a more stable place in Wild. Some mages use it in Quest Mage archetypes, where it has a somewhat respectable win rate. If Mage is your favorite class, we recommend keeping this card in your collection, as its long-term utility in Wild could increase over time.
Next we move on to cards with an average utility of 10 to 12%. Kolagarn and Kangar were able to reach mid-status at their peak. They were somewhat useful for nearly half of their lifespan, but most of the time, they remained in the weak or bad categories. Kolagarn's moment in the spotlight came relatively recently. It was used in a wide range of archetypes, including Shopper Demon Hunter, Dungar Druid, Big Shaman, and various hand buff and even mech paladin strategies. Moreover, the average win rate of these decks was decent. However, at this point, the card has disappeared from the meta again. It represents the turnaround mechanic, but unlike most Titans, it is actually well balanced. Thorum and Soulburner Varia had even more impressive peak numbers, with a utility index reaching up to 60%. However, they were considered useful for a shorter period overall.
What all these cards have in common is their uselessness in the current meta and the lack of viable use cases in Wild.
Ranked 75th is Rin, Orchestrator of Doom. This card only found a clearer role at the beginning of this year. It never left the niche card category, even at its peak utility, though players were more likely to find local meta use cases for it than not. The card is an auto-include in Splendiferous Whizbang decks, which show decent win rates at lower ranks. It also appears in some versions of the Location archetype, with around 1% of Warlocks including it. However, its most important value lies in Wild, where it sees play in various Highlander strategies.
The next category consists of cards with an average utility of 12 to 17%. These cards at their peak, crossed the 50% utility threshold, briefly earning the title of good cards. They held a more stable place in the meta for extended periods. Hodor and King Pinpad never dominated, but players actively used them throughout the post-release period. They occasionally resurfaced in experimental builds. The peak efficiency of Halvaria Dark Raven and Rock Mastervoon even exceeded 60%. Halvaria is still used in Zerg Demon Hunter archetypes, though unfortunately, they perform poorly. The card has even carved out a niche in Wild within Pirate and Zerg strategies. Demon Hunter players should consider keeping this tool in their collection. Inza was never a defining card for Shaman, but it remained relevant throughout the previous year. While Cho'Gall is primarily a fun card, it occasionally pops up on the fringes of Wild. The same goes for Freya Keeper of Nature, which can sometimes be found among the top 200 most popular Wild decks. Additionally, it is still played in Standard within Hydration Druid variants. Even the one Amalgam Band appears on the fringe of Wild from time to time. If you enjoy experimentation and fun, keep these cards in your collection. Spurfong was more of a niche card, used in Highlander and Hand Buff Hunter archetypes, though it saw no play in Wild. Heartbreaker Hedonis had the most impressive utility in this category. In September 2024, over a year after its release, the card became a strong meta tool thanks to the rise of the overheal strategy. It was also actively used in Wild within its own Heartbreaker Hedonis archetype, though its overall effectiveness was always very low. Overall, this category contains well-balanced cards that could not achieve higher popularity simply due to the extreme level of power creep. Many of them see play in Wild, though they are not core cards for the format.
Ranked 64th is Jotun the Eternal. This card has a powerful effect and great potential, but it failed to fully realize its strength due to the insane power level of other effects in the game. It is still used in both Standard and Wild within Outcast strategies, but their effectiveness is very low. Despite this, Demon Hunter players should keep this card, as it has huge potential for future matters.
Ranks 63 to 61 are occupied by 3 cards with an average utility of 19% over their lifespan. None of them found a viable role in Wild. Gunslinger Kurtrus never had impressive utility, but it remained in the meta for nearly its entire lifespan as part of Highlander Demon Hunter. This deck has never been highly effective and mostly existed on the fringes of the meta. The card is still somewhat useful, but the win rate of this strategy is terrible. The legendary spell Jive Insect had 2 waves of popularity. It saw effective play in multiple shaman strategies, including Nature, Jive, Bonk, and Rainbow, all just in the last 6 months. However, the card is now completely useless in Standard. Tram Conductor Jerry is an insanely strong card with a turnaround effect that significantly strengthened the Excavate synergy. Right after release, the archetype became incredibly strong, leading to a nerf that made the strategy more balanced. However, despite its strong effect, Jerry was not enough to keep the deck viable after rotation. The power level of the game has risen so high that even cards generating massive value in simple ways are now left behind.
Ranked 60th is the Spell Bounce Around featuring Garona, with an average utility score of 20%. This card has massive combo potential, but it has mostly occupied a very niche space in Standard or teetered on the edge of disappearing from the meta. Despite this, it has been and remains an essential tool for Wild, where it plays a key role in Alex Rogue. Additionally, it has seen use in Shark, Draka, and Maestra strategies. If you're a Rogue player, this is a must-have card for your collection.
And that concludes the list of the worst cards of the past 2 years. The remaining 59 cards have shown more impressive utility scores, with around 30 of them never leaving Standard and maintaining a consistently higher level of usefulness. If you're interested in an analysis of the best cards rotating out of Standard, let us know in the comments.
I think our list highlights a very important trend. While players often criticize the game for power creep, the current situation has created an environment where almost every card has some use case. Sure, not all of them are effective or meta-defining, but they aren't completely useless either. This allows players to explore unexpected interactions or use them in off-meta decks. I no longer feel like legendary cards are being printed just for the sake of it, which was something I often noticed in the past. However, if rotation and the new expansion lead to a power level decrease, I fear we might lose the usefulness of all the legendary cards. And I'll miss it very much.
Dear viewers, what do you think? Do you agree that most of the so-called worst rotating cards still had at least some utility? Have you noticed that legendary cards seem to have become more useful compared to previous years? Let us know your thoughts below and join the polls in your community tab. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to support our content and stay updated.
Traditionally, we want to express our boundless gratitude to our sponsors.
Dear friends, your help is invaluable. We will be grateful for any support.
Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really hope that we will have the opportunity to get in touch in the next video.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.